Hi, welcome to today's video where we'll be keeping our cool despite the summer heat. These 3 delicious chilled soup recipes are light, refreshing and very Moorish. We've got a surprisingly savoury strawberry gazpacho, a delicate green tea tonic and curried carrot and orange with zingy chickpea croutons. I hope you enjoy it. Let's begin with surprisingly savoury strawberry gazpacho. To a blender, add 150 grams of ripe strawberries, 150 grams of diced common tomato, 75 grams of grilled red bell pepper, 50 grams of peeled and diced cucumber, 1 heaped tablespoon of fresh basil leaves, 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, 1.5 teaspoons of balsamic vinegar, a generous grind of salt and pepper, and an optional tiny pinch of dried chili flakes. Blend everything together until smooth. Depending on your blender, you may need to add a splash of water to get things moving. I prefer my gazpacho to be ultra light and smooth, so I recommend passing it through a fine mesh sieve after blending. This helps remove any large tomato and strawberry seeds that didn't get broken down into the blender. It's not an essential step, but it does result in a seriously smooth, glossy soup with a light, airy texture. Once the soup has been blended and sieved, allow it to chill for at least 2 hours, preferably overnight. The flavour intensifies as it rests, so do your final seasoning taste test just before serving and adjust accordingly. This recipe makes enough for 1 medium serving or 2 small appetizer or tapas sized bowls. Optional toppings for the soup include sliced and diced cucumber, strawberries and small fresh basil leaves. If you like an extra kick, top with black pepper or dried chili flakes. Despite the main ingredient in this soup being juicy plump strawberries, it really is surprisingly savoury with a fruity, fragrant vibe. If you're a fan of traditional gazpacho, then I definitely recommend giving this sweet summer version a try. I was a little worried that this would taste a bit like a weird smoothie combo, but it's much more soup-like than that. The flavours in this are so intense that a small bowl at a time as an appetizer or cooling snack is a perfect portion. Feel free to increase the recipe as this lasts up to 3 days in the fridge. Just give it a good stir and possibly thin it down with a couple of ice cubes if it seems to overly thicken up as it chills. Next up is a gorgeous green tea tonic. But first let's talk about tea. Now I'm not proud when it comes to tea, so for me these cheap and cheerful jasmine green tea bags work a treat. If you're a self-confessed tea connoisseur, then feel free to substitute your preferred green tea and brewing methods. We'll be using 1 tea bag steeped in 800 ml of water for 10 minutes to a strong strength. For the purpose of this recipe, you'll need to know exactly how much water your teapot holds, as sizes do vary. The easiest way to do this is measure out your water into a measuring jug before filling the pot. This recipe requires 800 ml of water, so depending on the size of your teapot, you may need to top up with extra water to bring the total up to 800 ml. My teapot holds 700 ml, so I measured an additional 100 ml of water to add to the recipe later. Once you've got your water level figured out, brew the tea for 10 minutes whilst you prepare the rest of the soup. To a deep, non-stick wok over medium heat, add 1 teaspoon of toasted sesame oil, swirling this around to coat the base of the hot pan. Sprinkle in 1/4 teaspoon of Chinese 5 spice and 1 star anise pod. Stir the spice into the hot oil for 30 seconds, stirring briskly to ensure the spices don't burn. Add to this 60 grams of grated carrot and 60 grams of grated radish. Stir fry briskly for 1 minute before adding 200 grams of cooked sushi rice. Stir fry for 3 minutes and keep the rice continually moving around the pan to ensure it doesn't stick. After 3 minutes, add salt, 200 grams of thawed edamame beans and 30 grams of spring onion greens. Stir fry for 2 minutes. Pour in the steeped green tea and any extra water up to a total of 800 ml. Allow the soup to simmer on medium heat for 2 minutes before adding 2 tablespoons of finely chopped pickled ginger and 1 tablespoon of finely shredded nori seaweed. I managed to lose the footage for this, so here's a shot of how it looks afterwards. Sorry. Remove the soup from the heat and after 5 minutes, stir in 1 teaspoon of miso paste until it's fully dissolved. Remove the star anise pod and taste for seasoning. I added more salt, 1 teaspoon of rice vinegar and a tiny pinch of sugar to balance everything out. This soup is light and refreshing enough to be eaten straight away. Alternatively, it can be chilled and eaten within 24 hours. This soup makes 2 medium servings. Due to the use of cooked sushi rice for food safety's sake, this soup cannot be reheated. If you do save a portion for the following day, then plan to eat the soup cold. Serve topped with extra dried nori flakes and a sprinkle of spring onion greens. This delicate green tea tonic is a fab appetite booster and perfect on days when you really don't feel like eating. I recommend this nourishing tonic for anyone suffering in the heat or experiencing an IBS tummy flare-up. The edamame adds extra protein and nutrients, but could be left out if your tummy's feeling especially delicate or reacts to soy. This light dish is equally good either hot or cold, but on especially hot days my favourite way to serve it is straight from the fridge with additional ice cubes for a refreshing, hydrating meal at any time of day. And last but not least, creamy curried carrot and orange soup with spicy chickpea croutons. To a deep pot on medium heat, add 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, 1/4 teaspoon of asafoetida, 1/2 teaspoon of curry powder, 1 tablespoon of grated fresh ginger, 250 grams of diced carrots and 100 grams of diced radish. Add a splash of water if the spices begin to stick. Add a generous pinch of salt, pepper and freshly ground coriander seed. Then pour in 700 ml of hot vegetable stock, low FODMAP if preferred. Bring the soup to a boil, then reduce the heat to a simmer for 15 minutes until the carrots are just cooked. Turn off the heat before adding 150 grams of fresh diced orange flesh and 1 tablespoon of orange zest, reserving a pinch for garnish. Whilst the soup cooks, we'll get on with the croutons. Fry 1/2 teaspoon of dried cumin in 1 teaspoon of toasted sesame oil. After 30 seconds, add 84 grams of chickpeas and 20 grams of chopped pecans. Add salt, pepper and 1 teaspoon of nutritional yeast. Squeeze over lemon juice generously and fry on low for 10 minutes until blackened in places and deeply toasted. After you've allowed the soup to cool for about 15 minutes, stir in 120 grams of coconut yogurt. Once the soup is cool enough to be safely blended, then blitz until smooth. Once again, an optional step is to pass the blended soup through a fine mesh sieve to remove any pulp, zest or spice not broken down by the blender. The soup still tastes delicious without this, and if I'm serving it warm in winter, I'd skip this step. But for a light, airy summer soup, this extra effort results in the perfect texture. This soup makes 2 large bowls and can be served hot if you prefer it spicy, or cold to allow the citrus flavours to develop and the spice to mellow slightly. It can be stored in the fridge for up to 3 days. The zesty spiced chickpea and pecan croutons can either be served hot or cold and are really the best accompaniment to this dish. An extra dollop of coconut yogurt or sprinkle of orange zest also works really well as an optional topping. Don't be put off by the fact that this soup contains spices. It's perfectly balanced with the sweet and sour of the orange and the creamy coconut yogurt. Many people also swear by the fact that stimulating a mild sweat by increasing the body's internal temperature with spicy food results in an overall cooling effect on the body. I really hope you're making the most of whatever season you're in right now. If you've never considered cold soups before, I promise they're as tasty and enjoyable as any of your favourite hot soups. You'll be pleasantly surprised by their depth of flavour and refreshing, palate cleansing effect on a hot day. Please let me know in the comments below if you plan on making any of these recipes. As always, thanks so much for watching and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!